Okay, I'm going to be going back to college in the next couple weeks, and I'm making this video both for myself and the viewer to discuss my relationship towards what I call information systems and how to get the most out of your learning experience. I find a very common problem with these kind of information systems, which can be school or a workplace where you're constantly learning on the job, or some kind of college, or even self-learning if there's a skill you want to understand and are working on that for yourself. That's an information system. There's a common problem with all of this, which is that it's very easy to feel alienated within these systems. It's easy to feel that a teacher gives you an assignment to do with some information about the assignment, and then you do the assignment and give it right back to the teacher. And ultimately, what has been achieved in this? Someone has given you information, you have written this information down, and given it back to the person who gave you that information in the first place, right? I'm effectively made for the system of school. I can buckle down and just do work without really any deeper need than that. I can just put my nose to the grindstone and do work until I complete a goal, right? However, even this leaves me feeling burnt out after a period of time. And I'm going to be going through that. And my basic premise is that a process-oriented style of engagement with an information system is the best way to feel connected and a part of the process, the system that you're in. Starting off, I find that there's three real orientations that are common within people working within a certain system. And this is goal orientation, habit orientation, and process orientation. I'll go through each one of these one by one, starting with goal orientation. A goal-oriented perspective puts your focus exclusively at the finish line. It doesn't take the whole of the experience into consideration here. You're single-mindedly focused on the outcome, and you want to achieve that. You work towards that progressively until you achieve that final outcome, right? This is not necessarily bad. However, it only works for a certain amount of time. You can't keep this habit orientation going for years on end. That will just leave you feeling like nothing is truly being accomplished here, right? You get a spike of reward in the beginning when you're starting this new system and are excited about achieving the goal. However, that very quickly falls off, and you are left at the bottom. You are left at the trough of this graph for the majority of the time until hopefully, if you achieve your goal, then you get a spike of reward at the end, right? However, if you don't get the reward, then you feel like a failure. You feel like you've lost. You feel like you had one thing to do and you failed. And this is not productive. And even the sharp spike at the end is not ultimately productive, I don't find. The second orientation, and the one that I feel like is newer and gaining traction within culture, is the habit orientation. This is where you say, okay, I'm not going to focus on the goal. I don't care about where I get in the end. I'm just going to build a good system that keeps me going. And what this does is creates a spike in the beginning. Once your habit is formed, once it's like fully adopted, you say, I'm going to go run every day. And then at this point, a couple months in, you're saying, okay, I am just running every day now. That's great. But after that, a floor has been created. So there's very little friction to get started into this process. But there's also no real reward in each one of these instances of the habit, right? The perspective that people with habit orientations find themselves in, at least this is my case, and the perspective of other people that I've talked to, is that each habit is self-identical. Like if you are saying that you're going to sit down every day and do your homework, then that instance of doing your homework is self-identical to every other instance of you doing your homework. What really changes is the details and the nuances of the homework that you're doing, but that doesn't really matter. I have the same system. I do my math, and then I do my English, and then I do my science, and it's over. And even worse, each instance of a habit being self-identical within a habit orientation is not a problem. It is the solution to the problem. That's why you've set up a habit, right? And I want to say a habit-orientated mindset is not always bad. It really works for a lot of things. If you have small habits that you don't want to do, that you know you're not going to be engaged in, then it works really well to say, I'm just going to build a process where, build a routine where this works and it slides in the same way every single day or every week or every month or whatever. That is a really good system to get the ball rolling and continuing down the hill. However, if you are doing this for years on end and a large portion of your life is focused on the habits, then it can leave you feeling like each thing is self-identical and there is a floor that has been created here, and you're not really raising above that floor. You are just sitting at the floor of reward because this is what you do. To give an example from my life, for a long time in school, my goal every single semester would be to get an A on all of my assignments as possible, get A's on all my quizzes, and get A's in all of my classes. This worked as a goal for a while, and then after a while, it became a habit. It was no longer something that I really had to work towards. It was just something that I had the routines in place to continue forward. By the probably middle of 11th grade, I could not look at my grades anymore. I could not find any reward from the grades that I got. I would get A's on almost anything. And at that point, getting A's felt like the basic. It felt like the floor. There was no reward for going above and beyond because you couldn't go above and beyond. This perspective ultimately led me in my final year of high school to say that, like, this doesn't matter to me anymore. I don't care about the grades. I don't actually care that deeply about most of the assignments that I'm doing, so I'm not going to put in as much work. It's not worth my time and effort. And frankly, that worked well in a lot of ways. It really helped my perspective on the matter. 12th grade, for a myriad of reasons, but also because of that, was probably my happiest year of school. However, it also resulted in me feeling even further removed from the system. At least previously, I was part of the system insofar as I was doing what was expected of. You are now kind of standing back and saying, whatever, I show up here because I have to show up. And that is sad, in my opinion. That's not a good mindset to have, either for you or for your attitude towards learning or any of these systems. And because of this perspective, when I went into college, I knew that I wanted to engage more within the system. I wanted to feel like I was part of the system, like I was there for a reason and wanted to learn what was being taught to me. This ultimately led me, without really knowing it or naming it at the time, to what I now call a process-oriented mindset towards this information system. The rest of this video will really be focused on the process orientation, so I won't directly define the characteristics of it too much right now. However, I do want to define how I'm using the word process here. I have defined it kind of as a change in relation over time, and this relation is both within a system and within the connections between systems, and that will clarify itself a little bit throughout the rest of this video. I think a good visualization of this is looking at the structure of this system that you're in by itself. In its basic form, the structure of most information systems is pretty bland. There's some external information being given to you. You take that into your learning system, and then you basically relay it straight into some creation and an output that you ultimately give back to the person who gave you information in the first place. This is a very linear and straightforward system. There's not much that's able to change or wiggle here. And it ultimately leads to the feeling like everything is disconnected from everything else that you learn within the setting. I think the ideal structure of some system like this would be that some external information is fed into the system. It's integrated into the broader understanding of the subject as a whole. This broader understanding is now used as an input for your creative process, and you create some output that takes into consideration the structure as a whole. I also believe that this structure should be integrated into a personal relation of ideas, a connection of ideas, a web of ideas, I could say, that will give a person a firmer grasp of where these things lay in their mental map of the world. This can all now be put together and used as the final creative output, and that creative output itself should have some place to lay within the individual system. Now, this is not necessarily realistic because it requires a systematic change where teachers or professors are now giving you further information about how a certain piece of information relates to the broader system at hand. And an individual can do this by going and learning on their own, but that at this point, that kind of introduces a new information system that is beyond the scope of this video, I'll say. This issue now leads me to the realistic improvement of the system structure. This is something that an individual can do to change and feel more a part of the system as a whole. The basic layout is the same as the ideal structure. It now removes the integration node. However, it keeps the relation node, which I think is still important. You can still take in pieces of information and relate it to different subjects. Like if you take in something from philosophy, you should relate it back to your English class or your psychology class, and all of these things now start to build a map of understanding about how all of these subjects are not just disparate, isolated areas of focus, but are actually creating a dynamic worldview or some kind of map that you now have, that you now feel part of. You feel integrated within, and I think that's really important for building an attitude, a positive attitude towards the process of learning and engaging. My camera is almost dead, so let me see if I can plug that in. Crisis averted, chat. Cheers. Now, the difference between integration and relation can be kind of difficult to grasp, kind of nuanced. So I want to get into that a little more. I think that they can be adequately described as a synthetic versus analytic relation to the process, or kind of sub-processes that you run. Do you run a synthetic sub-process or an analytic sub-process? Starting with the analytic sub-process of learning, pretending that this whole tree structure represents a subject at large. The whole thing is representative of a single subject, like math. This whole thing could be math. You start at the beginning. You start with some concept, the like core concept of math, which is like numbers can be combined to get new numbers or something like that. And then you work down to lower and lower levels, smaller and smaller levels, so that you build a more broad understanding of the subject as a whole. At the top represents like a very high level understanding of the system, like an unnuanced but correct like definitional level. And as you go further and further down, you kind of get into the atoms, more of the details, the smaller components that make the whole system run. Chemistry at the top would be like the definition of chemistry, and then at the bottom, you could even argue that it's at the bottom of chemistry is actually physics or something like that. Some just like very small, nuanced physics concepts that allow chemistry to run, right? And what's being given to you is often one of these nodes, one of these key ideas, one of these areas where the branches overlap. However, you're often not taught how this whole thing relates to other nodes within the system, right? You're just taught that each one of these things exists. Remember that this thing exists and know when to use it. Know some of the context around when to use it. But you don't have a broader understanding, and if you have a broader understanding, then it makes it way easier to understand where each of these things fits, why it lays there, and when to access different branches of this tree, right? And I guess I'll make it clear, if this is not a clear picture, that is definitely my fault. However, at the top is like the start of the tree, and then each one of these things is a branch from that core idea, right? It branches down into different elements, and each one of those branches has a sub-element and a sub-element, and so on and so forth. Where these branches connect is a key idea. Now, importantly, this arborescent tree structure is not necessarily correct. However, I designed it as such because if you create a downward-facing tree structure of information, and then where the branches collide, they stop producing new branches, and it creates Serpinski's triangle, which I think is really cool. I think that's a really cool fractal. So just work with my definition here and look at the pretty fractal triangle fractal tree triangle factor tree fractal structure. I don't think this video is getting clearer from here on out. Now, opposed to this analytic structure, which teaches you where things lay within the context of the individual system, the synthetic structure is much more web-like. You take one idea and then relate it to different things within different systems. It's now not just one single system that builds outwards. It's a bunch of different systems, and each idea within some different system can relate to a different idea within a different system. And this clearly is what I love. This is the bread and butter of this whole channel, is synthetic relation. It is lateral thinking and connecting disparate ideas to try to create some new connection, some new edge that you can walk across. And this really, at least for me, makes me feel fully integrated into the system now. With this synthetic relation, I'm now no longer just learning individual nodes. I'm connecting these nodes. I'm bashing these nodes together, creating something new, creating edges that are transversal and give you a broader understanding of not just an individual system, but now systems as a system themselves. And this balancing act of analysis and synthesis is not just useful when you're in a school or learning environment, but it's useful for building an understanding of the world. You take different pieces of reality and abstract them out in different ways and see how they connect to each other. And now you have a world map. And this world map allows you to transverse the actual reality in some way. However, you don't have to have a single map of reality. You can abstract in different ways, say different nodes or parts of different systems. And because of that, they relate with different systems. And now you abstract out further and have multiple maps, and you can see which map fits your perception of reality at any given time. This is where the fun begins, just in life in general, or at least as I live right now. I find it beautiful that different things, different abstract representations can represent a reality, an actual reality, an agreed upon reality in different ways. And you can decide when to use different things, and when all of these things are just tools now, tools at your disposal. Use them as such, use them as you see fit, and now you feel like you are interacting in the world in a truly novel fashion. It is beautiful. And it's important to have both pieces of this puzzle. You can't just have synthesis, you can't just have analysis. If you want to build a process, if you want to say that there is change in relation within a structure, then you need both of these things. You need to integrate them together. You need a relatively deep understanding of certain systems so that you get new nodes introduced into the system. And then you need this graph web structure that connects these different nodes to different structures, different nodes outside of the original system. You need to connect trees with, become a spider, frankly. Connect trees with webs is really the main thesis, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Connect trees with webs. I think with this understanding, we can now construct a graph of reward, taking this process-oriented viewpoint into account. At the beginning, you only have a few nodes, and you only see how those relate in a very defined, determinate fashion, right? And you don't have much further information to interrelate at this point. This is a turbulent process, right, of up and down. If you're trying to just go with the flow, go with the actual information that you're picking up, then it's very turbulent. Sometimes you enjoy it, sometimes you find the individual nodes interesting, and other times you don't. That's okay. It starts to become interesting after step like 2 or 3, when you now have enough subnodes to create an arborescent structure, and you see how these things relate within a broader system. And a little further down the road, you now see how these things don't just relate to other nodes within the graph, but can relate to nodes outside of the graph, and just start drawing those connections and start creating. This is truly a creative endeavor at this point, when you are taking these different ideas and relating them together to try to create something new. Some of these nodes, especially in like scientific classes, are objective. You need to know the information within the nodes. However, the connections between the nodes are not objective. You can connect basically any node. This process of interrelation between different nodes creates a bunch of edges and allows for some people to traverse them if they desire to, and other people to choose not to. And this is truly creative. Any objectivity, any sense of objective analysis is removed. It's abstracted at this point. And you can just say, this node, this connection between nodes is personally meaningful for me, and it makes me feel integrated into the system. However, outside other connections may not be as meaningful to me, so I'm not going to use them. And now you are part of the process. You're integrated into the system at large, not just this system, but the broader system of reality, of ideas, of things, of ways of thinking. And that's wonderful. That's outstanding to me. Now, this process of picking up new nodes and relating them to outside nodes can be thought of as some kind of cycle, or at least it's cyclical in nature. However, it's not quite cyclical in my interpretation, at least. It's even in my previous graph, it was a lot more. It mellowed out after a while. There's less downs. There's the highs are still relatively high, and now you are just integrated into this process as a whole. You're not focused on anything outside, anything external necessarily. You can just exist in this interrelating, this fashion of making connections between different nodes. And that's really eye-opening, in my opinion. So I believe it's more reasonable to look at it like a spiral, like an inward spiral, than just a simple cycle. You spiral inwards and you eventually end up at some kind of point. And that point is a flow state, that you just exist in a kind of flow understanding of the systems that you're in. You're picking up new ideas. You're saying, oh, wow, this makes a lot of sense if you connect it to this map. And oh, I guess you can make it connect it to some other map. And now you're just existing, taking in information and processing it. You're just a processing machine at this point. You take in value, and you create more value by connecting different points of value in different ways. I'll finally leave you with this: the two snake Ouroboros of integration and understanding, where one snake is the snake of creation. It intakes something and synthesizes it with other nodes within some other system and creates those connections. It's now integrated into your world understanding. This world understanding is taken as an input into this snake of knowledge, and it can analyze that and gain a deeper understanding of any single point, any single index, and build more of a stronger tree structure from any of those points. And once that is done, you now have understanding of a domain of knowledge. And this domain of knowledge is fed back into the snake of creativity. And the process continues in this fashion. Now, certainly you still need some kind of external knowledge, right? So this snake of creation is not just your own snake, but it's really the world's snake that you are now contributing to in some fashion. And every new connection in some way is made by some outside connection, outside of the field, coming up with a new solution to a new problem that's been put out there. You come out with a new solution, not because you sit there and think for long enough, but because you have knowledge of some different domain that you pull from and throw into this solution. And it bangs together, it fuses together, and produces something new, some new contribution to an area of understanding. And this fused creation now belongs to the snake of knowledge. It belongs to a specific domain. It's part of a tree. It's a fruit on a tree. And it gets integrated into this broader domain. And this new node is now taught to future generations. And those future generations can take this node and connect it to something disparate. And the cycle continues. This is the cycle of creation. This is the cycle of knowledge. This is how knowledge and understanding and creation is done. The two Ouroboroses, or the two snake Ouroboros. Is it one Ouroboros if it has two snakes? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. Someone with outside knowledge, please let me know if this is one or two Ouroboros. With that, I wish you luck with whatever information system you're currently a part of. I hope that you understand this tree structure and understand the value of it in feeding you new nodes. And I hope you understand that you intrinsically have this ability of connecting different ideas and becoming part of the process. You are a process creating machine, and I hope that that comes through as a core idea of this video. You have it within you. So I wish you luck, and I will see you next time. I guess before we leave, I should say thank you for all of the support on the channel. It's truly astounding. I never expected to reach 100 subs, much less like 400 or 500 subs. That's wild to me, frankly. This channel has kind of blown up within the last week or so, and that's amazing to see. That is not what I at all expected. So if there's anything you want to see on this channel or any specific elements that you like of it, let me know. I would love to hear some feedback from some viewers. I think it's super cool to have people commenting. I love all of the comments that people leave. It acts as a lot of goop for me to intake and think about and roll around in my head. So thank you all. I will see you soon.